Hi there, welcome to the Accidental Pop Star here on YouTube. My name is Ali Begg. I am a former author, a sports broadcaster, and I now run my own online channels. I was also a member of 90s boy band Bad Boys Inc. We were signed to A&M Records between 1992 and 1995, and we were lucky enough to have had 6 top 30 UK hits and a top 10 selling album before we actually went our separate ways in the spring of 1995. We also had a few hits abroad as well. I had my 15 minutes of fame, which actually left many unanswered questions, and it also made me question the type of person that I was striving to be. So what is this channel all about? What I want to do is speak to pop stars, both past and present, about their own experiences and see if we can find common ground. Is having a #1 record and being on the front cover of Smash Hits magazine everything that it's cracked up to be? For this episode, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to the Accidental Pop Star an old friend of mine, ex-Spandau Ballet lead singer Tony Hadley. Tony was awarded an MBE in 2020 for his charity work. He continues to be hugely popular across the circuit, and he's a way to make brand new material, which we will talk about. I was delighted to have caught up with him from his home near London. Welcome to the Accidental Pop Star, Tony Hadley. Good morning. How the devil are you?
Mr. Beggs, you've been missing in action, dear boy.
Haven't I just?
How you doing? No, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Still doing what I love. Still making music and gigging and driving people up the wall. Yeah, having a good time. Not playing any football though.
I know, mate. I know. To put that into context, so Tony and I used to play football together for what? Going on 10 years for the Arsenal ex-pros and celebrity football team. We used to raise money every Sunday for the Arsenal Charitable Trust, and we became really, really good pals through that. Mate, listen, I've got lots to get through.
Okay.
I hope you're ready for this.
Ask me whatever you want to ask me. I'm an open book.
Excellent.
So just ask me whatever you want.
Oh, I'm gonna.
Go on then.
Right, I want to begin. Usually I begin by going right back to the sort of the early days of artists' recording lives and stuff. But I want to start with your voice, this iconic voice. When did you first start to realise that you could sing?
Well, I mean, I went to a very quite a high Church of England school, Clerkenwell Parochial, which was in Islington. So we had hymns every day. So we were singing every day. We were singing church, assembly, and everything else. And it was. And then when I went to Dame Alice Owen's, which was grammar school just down the road, I got picked for the choir, and then I got picked for the special choir, and we sang at the Guildhall in London.
Oh.
And to begin with, what I really wanted to be was not a singer. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an orthopaedic surgeon.
Oh, really?
And I still find medicine fascinating. I can watch operations and all sorts of stuff. I'm a bit weird, yeah. And I realised that I wasn't clever enough, when it came to maths, which physics and chemistry. My maths is terrible even to this day. So I realised that I was never going to make it as an orthopaedic surgeon, and discovered singing. My mum and dad bought me a tape recorder. I recorded myself singing along to Queen, Elton John, Roxy, Rod Stewart, all those kind of Bebop Deluxe, Mark Bolan, Bowie. And I would record myself, and I thought, because every kid likes a microphone.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, you're pretty okay. And you've sung in the choirs. And eventually I got up enough courage. We used to go to Pontins holiday camps. For those who don't know, they were like Butlins, Pontins. In the UK, they're pretty unique. And I sang in a show. Loads and loads of people came up to me afterwards and said, wow, you're okay. You can sing, mate. I forgot the words halfway through, which has actually haunted me ever since. And I've forgotten the words on stage in front of thousands of people several times over the years. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally.
We've all been there.
And that was the start of it, really. That was the start of me thinking, wow, I want to be a singer. And And we formed the band in 1976, our school, Damien Alice Owens.
Yeah,
And the rest is
which I will come to. But see when you were growing up, because I want to go through sort of the styles and the fashions that was
yeah.
going on at that time, Tony. First of all, were you a punk, and who were your musical influences?
I was a punk. We were a punk band. We were like a power pop Generation X style band, you know, Billy Idol's old band.
Okay.
My influences were punk. I loved punk. Thought it was a fantastic part of music. As I said, all the other greats in the 70s, Bowie, Mark Bolan, Bebop Deluxe, Queen, etc. They were a big influence. But also my parents were massively into Sinatra, Victor Moan, Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald, Jack Jones. So my mum said to me, you know, listen, I know you love all your musical heroes, your pop heroes, but just listen to some of this old stuff. Actually, at the time, it wasn't that old. So, you know, and just check it out, because if you want to be a singer, listen to the phrasing, listen to the intonation and stuff, and the way they sing. And it was a big influence. So that whole Sinatra, Bennett, Jack Jones, Victor Moan kind of thing was a massive influence on my style of singing, along with all the pop people that I loved as well.
Okay, let's talk about Spandau and when you boys first got together. So was punk a huge influential, was it the way that you wanted to make music? Did you want to be a punk band?
Well, we started off, to be honest, in the school music room. The original sort of band was, I was a frustrated drummer, and one day and I was drumming in the music room, and John Keeble, Gary Kemp, Steve Norman, and Michael Ellison, our first bass player, came in. John kicked me off the drums, and he was infinitely better than I was. And you know, I'm still a terrible drummer. And I had a couple of girl singers to begin with, and for the life of me, I can't remember their names. But anyway, so I used to go and watch them every day for the next few days in the music room, and I thought, God, you need a proper lead singer. You need a proper lead singer. And it was really Steve Norman that said, Tom, we're thinking of forming a proper band and we want a singer. And I was like, hey, you got your man here. And I just belted out something. And he said, wow, yeah, you can sing. And the next day I went in, and our first song was a Chuck Berry song called Whoa, Carol, Don't Let Us Steal Your Heart Away. Yeah. And that was the first song we ever sang together as a band. And that was the start of the band. And we were called, so to begin with, we were an R&B style band.
Okay.
Playing Silver Train, Midnight Hour, Saw Us Standing There, those kind of songs. And then Gary and Steve were started to write songs. And that's kind of, we went from the roots to the cut. Then we became the Makers, where we were a very good, actually, power pop punk band. And we were singing a lot of our own songs as well, playing the Roxy in Neal Street, big punk club, the Rock Garden in Covent Garden, the Grand, Fulham Palace Road. So we were playing all the venues that all your up and coming bands were playing, and the Clash had played, the Pistols had played, and everything else.
Okay, that's really interesting, because I actually always did wonder if you were, say, a mainstream pop band who was trying to get gigs in London at that time, was it more difficult because the scene was very much punk and you had to be a punk band to get a gig?
Well, there were two sides, actually, to the whole punk thing. There was the kind of Eddie and the Hot Rods and sort of the Dr. Feelgood sort of R&B side of punk. Yeah. And then there was the pure punks, like bands like Chelsea and Susie Sue and stuff like that. I mean, if you look at the Clash, the Clash, for instance, wrote brilliant pop songs, as did the Pistols, actually. They were brilliant pop songs. But no, I mean, what we used to do, myself and... so we had Michael Ellison as our first bass player. By the time we got to the Makers, Richie Miller from school had joined us. So he was our second bass player. And myself and John Keeble used to go out in either his dad's car or my dad's car. And we used to scour the pubs around London and the clubs saying, yeah, mate, we got a band. We're really good. Can we come and play? And in those days, I have to say, as long as you guarantee to bring 30 or 40 people in, you play the back of a pub, get a pint of lager and a packet of crisps, literally. And that's what we did. We tried to play everywhere we could.
Okay, so how did the transition begin to move into this new romantic era? How did that work, Tony?
Well, so the Makers, as I said, we were a punk band as the Makers. Then we changed it. Punk was kind of on its wane. It was kind of going out. Then we became Gentry. Bloody awful name. It was. We were sort of, kind of funk dandies, if you like.
Okay.
But the whole scene was changing in London, and all of a sudden, in '78, Billy's became a sort of new Romo futurist club, which then, excuse me, then eventually it was the Blitz in London, in Covent Garden, and so the whole fashion was changing. And then you had Steve Strange, bless him, on the door telling, "Oh, you can come in, you can't."
Yeah.
And it was literally everybody dressing up. I don't know, Robin Hood. That's sort of like Robin Hood, futurist, Captain Scarlet. I mean, you name it, anything went, as long as you were over the top and dandy, and the girls wore incredibly elaborate dresses and stuff. And it was a great fun period. I mean, a lot of people, I suppose, read a bit too much into it, although it was artistic and there were designers and everything else. You've got to remember that fundamentally, we weren't sitting around talking about Nietzsche and Freud. We were actually in a wine bar in Covent Garden on I think it was a Tuesday night, having a lot of fun and listening to some great music. Kraftwerk, La Dusseldorf, Systems of Romance by Ultravox had just come out.
Yeah.
And it was a really exciting time. A lot of Roxy was in there, and Bowie as well. So it was a good time. Lou Reed, Velvet Underground.
See, when you made that transition, I've always wanted to know who styled you. Did you style yourself, or did you actually have a stylist?
Eventually we had a stylist because,
Okay.
I mean, things changed. While the club thing was happening, we didn't have a stylist. There were designers there, Melissa Kaplan being one, Stephen Linnard, and can't remember. Anyway, but loads of people that were designing clothes. And so at the time, it was the club that influenced the look. So, for instance, when Chris Sullivan took over the Le Kilt Club in London, which was all decked out in tartan, it was basically a foreign students' club.
Okay.
He took it over on a certain night, guaranteed the people. And so that tartan look became the next look. So hence, to cut a long story short, which was our first single, we were wearing the kind of the Scottish tartan. And so the clubs influenced the look. Eventually, Martin Kemp joined the band on bass, and we bought a synthesizer. It was a Yamaha, whatever it was. And that changed the whole sound of the band. The whole sound became more four on the floor, more electronic, bit of funk as well in there as well. And with Martin joined the band, we became Spandau Ballet.
Okay.
I suppose in a sense we became the house band for the Blitz and the whole new Romos.
Yeah. You see, what I found really, really interesting, and I want to skip forward a few months if that's okay, Tony, is that, I want to put this question into context, because we had to do exactly the same on a completely different level from you guys, but the DNA of it is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I'd like to suggest to you that one of the most important gigs that you guys ever played as a band was the Halligan's rehearsal studio, where you basically did your showcase gig.
Yeah.
Where, if my memory serves me correct, and I was very young at the time, but if my memory serves me correct, you had record company representatives there, you had family there, and you had your peers there. So we did the same. We had to do a showcase event as well to try and basically scout ourselves to record company executives. And I'm very grateful to Steve Wolf and Howard Berman, who I know you know well, who actually signed us.
Great.
Yeah, who signed us to A&M at the end of the day. But those gigs, people don't know about these gigs and how important they were. How fundamentally important was that gig in that rehearsal room that night?
Well, we rehearsed in Halligan's way before we were Spandau as well. So,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we were rehearsing there as the Makers and stuff like that.
Right.
And Madness were rehearsing there as well.
Oh,
and
no
Iron
way.
Maiden. So we got to know all the Tony Hadley was the guy who owned it. So we got to know the Maiden boys, great bunch of lads, and all the Madness boys as well. So eventually, when we did become Spandau Ballet, it was suggested that we did it, and there were no record company guys actually at that particular show.
Right? Really?
No, it was just a couple of family and friends and people from the clubs, the sort of the influencers, I suppose you'd call them these days. And we did this gig and everybody said, wow, this is fantastic. This is different. So, we were doing it in London. The Duranis were doing it in Birmingham and Depeche were doing it in Basildon.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until we played, I think it was the HMS Belfast, which was the big battleship on the Thames. That's when the record companies came down to see us.
Okay.
But the very first show that we did for all the glitterati of London was there were no record company people there.
Okay, understood. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Okay, so because at the time you were being chased by a number of labels, so how did you decide which one to go with?
Well, we were being chased by loads of record companies, and I think Chris Wright, I remember, and Doug Darcy came to the HMS Belfast, along with Island Records as well. And it was a case of we were getting offered deals by lots of different companies, but we just felt Chrysalis just had something about them. And I think it was the right choice as well. It was a small company. It felt like a very family-orientated company. It wasn't corporate in the way that the CBSs and the EMIs were. We just felt there was a connection there, and you're always looking for a connection. And they also believed in us. Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing, you mentioned Howard Burnham. He's a really great guy, straight ahead guy, and that's what you want. You want people who definitely believe in you. And so for that reason, we signed a deal. Just
let me go back 1 second, just for those who may not know the story, Tony, and who are really interested. How did you get the name? How did Spandau Ballet become what it was?
That was Bob Elms. Bob Elms does BBC Radio London there. He's a journalist and broadcaster. We didn't have a name. In fact, we might not have even had a name at Halligan's. So I'm not sure.
Seriously?
I'm not sure we did. And it was Bob Elms had been to, because Berlin's always had a fascination. The music that comes out from Berlin is incredible. Yeah. Bowie was over there doing Low and Heroes and stuff like that. The Velvet Underground, so Iggy Pop. So there's always been a something slightly seedy but avant-garde about Berlin. Bob went over there to see some bands or whatever, visit some clubs, and he saw the name graffitied on a bathroom toilet wall in a club. We were looking for a name, and he said, "I think I've got it." And we couldn't. It was the unpronounceables. Spindu. And I remember it was so different because you're always looking for a different name.
Of course.
Whether it's Culture Club, Duran, Ultravox, or whatever. And that was it. We thought, okay, super, lovely. Brilliant. That's the one.
A piece of graffiti on a wall. That's amazing.
So I think he was having a wee at the time. He looked up.
Good line. Brilliant. I want to talk about records and records getting released. Did you guys have any say in that process, or did you do what you were told?
No, to be honest, that was the other good thing about Chrysalis. We set up our own label within Chrysalis called Reformation, which really was just a sort of tokenistic thing. It didn't actually do anything. Okay. But what was great about Chrysalis is they let us literally, I heard the demos and stuff like that, and they signed us. In those days, I don't know about all record companies, but certainly at Chrysalis, they let us go off. We went to the Manor, which was Branson's studio, I think, in Oxfordshire, to record a lot of the album, some of the album. But we also recorded in London as well. I think, was it Trident Studios in London, where we did To Cut Long Story Short, and then Jam Studios, where I actually sung the vocal to Cut Long Story Short on the day we signed the record deal.
Oh, really?
So I was slightly worse for wear because we've been drinking champagne, but hey, there you go. So we were allowed to pretty much do what we wanted. And when we presented the album, none of the record company had heard the finished product. We presented the album, playback, and they all went, wow, this is fantastic. And Story was released in 1980, I think 5th of November.
Yeah.
I said, right. And it went to number 5 in the chart, which for a first single was incredible, because in those days, if you had a top 75 record on your first release, that was deemed a success. it's not like today. Today's,
Yeah.
if you don't get top 5 and you're, I don't know, Rita Ora or whatever, then you're doomed. But in those days, top 75, top 50 was amazing. To get a number 5 single with our first record was incredible.
Let's jump forward. I want to talk about True, because what I'm interested here, Tony, is about the whole process of your role. Now, obviously, lead singer, frontman of the band, but obviously you had the other, like Gary, for example, was predominantly writing everything for you guys.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the process of the song being made and how it's made, what was your role here? Did you get involved in the harmonization? What did you, how did you go in and say, right, I think we should pitch it at this level, I think we should hit these notes? How did that work? What did you do?
Well, Gary, to be honest, was very good at knowing where my voice was, range and everything else and stuff like that. I'm lucky that I've got quite a big range. I mean, I can sing, even today, I haven't had to drop the keys to any of the songs. They're still in the same key. And so my range is quite high, probably higher now than it was even when I was younger. So Gary always had a good idea about where I was going vocally. And, he'd come in, play the song on acoustic guitar. We'd all start to get involved, and Martin would be looking at the chords, and Steve and John and everything. And I think the interesting thing about Spandau, and the interesting thing about a lot of singers from that period, is we had very distinctive voices.
Yeah.
I cannot get away from me, Tony Hadley. I'm not even saying I like my own voice, but I can't get away from me. It's whatever I sing, whether it's a Bowie song or whatever, or Frank song, I still sound like Tony Hadley. So Gary would sing the song, and I'd slowly pick up the melody and everything else, and he'd have the lyrics. And slowly I'd go over it with Gary on acoustic guitar. But his interpretation and my interpretation, his voice and my voice are very, very different. So it always sounds like Tony Hadley.
Okay.
And, as a band, we were very creative in rehearsals, and we would all put in ideas and everything else. And it certainly wasn't dominated by just one person.
Sure.
And
see, because what's fantastic is that, and I only picked this up today before we came on, you obviously went to number 1. It was a huge hit across the world.
Yeah.
And also, you were number 1 on the 1000th edition of Top of the Pops. Now, how cool is that?
Yeah, that was great. I mean, 1983. And I remember there was a big party at the Roof Gardens in London, in Kensington. And my one memory I've got of that, number 1, it was good fun. But Steve Norman, they said, "Oh, Steve, can we have a picture of you eating some of the Top of the Pops cake?" And I remember is Steve, kind of like with this big piece of cake, and that picture ended up everywhere. Not necessarily the picture you want on that anniversary, but it was a great achievement. And I think as a band, we certainly changed. If you look at the style of To Cut a Long Story Short, and you look at True, entirely different styles. Yeah. And give Steve Norman his due. He was a big influence on Gary's writing in terms of, he picked up percussion, because originally he was a guitarist.
Ah, was he?
And he played bass, and he's a very clever guy. And then he got into percussion, and then he got into saxophone. He's a self-taught saxophonist. And that then had a big influence on the style of the True album as well. I mean, you've got all the sax on True, which is everybody, well, most people in the world can probably sing that, I would imagine. So, it's interesting the way that we changed as a band.
What I love about True, and what I always think makes a great song, is it gives you goosebumps. And, why I now live on the sort of the German-Austrian border. And I swear, Tony, whenever we're out and about, it doesn't matter whether in Germany or Austria, and the various radio stations, I swear, mate, that song gets played every couple of days. It's on all the time, and it gives me goosebumps every single time. I just love it, and I defy anybody not to love it. You must be hugely proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't think as an artist you look at it in the same way as a punter would, or as a fan.
Yeah, I get that.
Because, you've had some great songs, and you might say, well, that's a good song, but you don't look at it in the same way that one of your fans would look at it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same for me. I mean, actually, at the time, I didn't think True was a single. And it was, in fact, it was Simon Bates on Radio 1 at the time who picked it up and said, wow, this is the new album. This is the title track. Played it twice, which no one does these days on radio. Played it twice and said, you know, if this is not a single and a number one song, then there's no justice in the world, kind of thing. And so after he said that, we released it as a single, because True was not typical of Spandau Ballet. It was a ballad. We hadn't really done a ballad before. But as you say, it gets played all the time. One of the most played records on American radio.
Yeah.
And, you know, I still sing it live. And when I do, you know, the audience sing most of it for me, which is great.
And I guess they do the same for Gold as well, because the timing of that record and the release of that record, was that down to you or was that down to the label? Because it was perfect timing.
I haven't got a bloody clue. I don't know. I probably down to the label, I would imagine. You know, trying to keep momentum up and everything else, but yeah, probably down to the label.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I tend not to get involved, or I didn't get involved certainly in the release of different things, and leave that to the marketing people.
Yeah. Let's talk about fame. I want to talk about your level of fame. When did you start to feel a real shift in your let's say public face? Did you notice a big shift?
I remember one particular time that I came out of a baker's in Hackney. I just fancied a sausage roll. I mean, I can't remember. So anyway, I went to this into the baker's. I said, "Oh, excuse me, can I have a sausage roll or whatever?" And there you go. And as I came out, probably dressed like Robin Hood, there was 3 schoolgirls that went into absolute hysterics and screaming on the street, you know, and I'm going, calm down. And then people are coming out the shops and thinking that something had happened, and they were just in bits and crying. It was like Beatlemania or something.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, wow, I've never had this reaction in my life before. Yeah, I suppose that was the first time that I thought, wow, you know, this me is making a difference to these young girls, but also appearing on Top of the Pops. Top of the Pops, that was, you know, as a band, you know, your first thing is gigs. Your second thing is get the songs together, get the record deal. Please, God, have a hit. Let me go on Top of the Pops. Yeah. Because Top of the Pops was the thing that was that you felt you really made it.
Do you know what?
That was the moment I felt that we'd really made it. Yeah.
Do you know what I really regret is I let that day pass me by, because I just didn't take it in, and I'm devastated about it. I have very little memories of it, but what I do recall about our first appearance on Top of the Pops was we wore our own clothes, so we weren't styled. I wore a white vest, a pair of cut jeans up to nearly my belly button, and my hair was totally forward. Honest to Christ, man, what was I thinking? And they put dry ice on the stage. So when we did the rehearsals, I kept falling over. I kept falling on my backside because I couldn't get the grip on the stage. And our tour manager went and got me a can of Coke, and he poured a can of Coke over the soles of my boots that I was wearing to make them sticky, so that when we did the show, my boots were totally sticky and I never fell over. But I let the day pass me by, and I've always regretted it.
Everybody does that. People talk about Live Aid, and we were all so nervous, and that's the problem. The nerves get the better of you. So it's a bit like, your wedding day. You go, oh yeah, wow, and then bang, it's gone. It's gone in an instant. There's very little you can remember about it, except that wow, it was wonderful and beautiful. But that's when your expectation of something, it's your mind is racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour because you're so excited.
Yeah.
And therefore, it just goes. So,
we were very lucky. We did Top of the Pops 4 times, Tony, and it's only now when people ask me, "Oh, did you do Top of the Pops?" I mean, yeah, 4 times. And they're like, "You were on Top of the Pops 4 times." And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's almost like, yeah, of course we were. And then when I think, oh my God, I was on
yeah.
Top of the Pops.
I
It's
think, you know
terrible.
what I think is such a shame, though, is that there's not a vehicle, a mainstream TV
Yes,
vehicle for
yes,
young bands and
yeah,
young talent. I
yeah.
know I don't know, TikTok and all the social media stuff and everything else,
It's not the
YouTube,
same.
but actually a program on mainstream television that is dedicated to up and coming bands or young chart bands. I'm not talking about people like myself, but you know, just giving those, because the one thing that Top of the Pops did, you know, as you know, when you were a kid, you watched it with your mum and dad, and sometimes your nan and granddad,
Yeah,
and they were going, "Look at the state of them, oh, in the army," you know all that crap, and and but everybody knew who you were. You know,
yeah.
when Bowie went on and did Starman or whatever, Roxy, Virginia Plain, Mark Bolan with a big bow around him was a, everybody in the family knew who these artists were, and that it's not the same today. And things changed, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I do think that major television neglects pop, and I think that's a.
See when
So I've
you
just
see.
got to get that one out.
No, no, no. Listen, mate, I totally agree with you. I'm 100% with you. Going back to the fame thing. See when
Yeah.
you become famous, it's the natural progression when you're in a successful pop group. But did you, when you ever went out and you travelled and anything like that, and you met famous people, did you ever get starstruck at, like, say, a party or something like that?
Absolutely, but I never
Did
let
you?
them know that. Yeah, but I one of my this is one of my brilliant things. We were in the Groucho Club in London, I think, celebrating 25 years of Queen. They just, I think, had done a special Top of the Pops, and we were all waiting for the Queen boys. I knew Freddie and the Queen boys, and that was a major thing for me, meeting Freddie and the boys. And we were standing there waiting for the lads to come in, and all of a sudden I got a tap on the shoulder, and I turned around and he went, "All right, Tone, how's it going?" I went, "Hello, Rod. How are you, mate?" And there's Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart's just, I was like, "That's Rod Stewart." And then behind him was Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd. I'm like,
Oh, no
and he
way.
went, "All right, Tone, how's it going?" I said, "Yeah, hi, Dave. How are you?" So to meet, you know, your musical heroes was always amazing, but you always try to be super cool. There's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
story because Steve Strange at the Blitz Club would always turn people away if you weren't dressed properly. No, 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 you don't look good. No, you can come in, you can't. You know, it was, I mean, humiliating, to be honest. Anyway, so well, I'm in the club, and there was a rumor going around that Steve had turned away Mick Jagger
No
because
way.
he didn't look cool. Yeah. So I
No
went up to
way.
Steve and I said to him, "Someone's just told me you've turned away Mick Jagger." And he said, "Yeah." He said he wasn't dressed properly. He wasn't dressed. I said, "Are you serious? You've turned away?" I said, "I really want. I mean, you know, I might be dressed like Robin Hood, and you're dressed like Captain Scarlet. I want to meet." So, and I was like, "I can't believe you've turned away Mick bloody Jagger." Um, yeah, I mean,
Mad.
I tell you what. I mean, you know this as well. That people say, you know, what are pop people are, what they like around each other. Musicians tend to gravitate towards each other. There's most musicians are pretty decent people, artists and stuff like that, and we all like to have a good chat and a drinky poos and stuff. And meeting your heroes is an absolute bonus. It really is.
I want to speak to you about your first marriage. And the reason I want to ask about that, Tony, is because I think we have common ground here. So when you first told the band that you were getting married, from what I can understand by talking to you previously, it wasn't exactly, it felt very unwelcomed. Is that how it felt to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, I was the first one in the band, excuse me, to get married, and it was very. Yeah, when I remember in the rehearsal studio saying to the guys, "Oh, I've got some really, really good news. Me and Lady are going to get married," and it was like, what? And it was you can't, you know, basically you can't do that. You know, it's going to affect our fan base and everything else. And so I had a massive screaming match with with the boys, them one side and me the other. And in the end, I said, look, I don't give a monkeys what you're saying. This is what I'm doing. I'll give you the invite. If you want to come along, you come along. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
That's the way I am. And anyway, they all came along to the wedding. It was fine. And then we had our first number one. So, I mean, I suppose the same is very true of sort of young bands and stuff. It's, I mean, was it John Lennon when he first was getting married and stuff like that? It was all sort of, oh my God, you're going to ruin the fan base. But, I don't think fans care about that.
Okay, so I'll just very quickly tell you my stories, just to put this all into context. So I had a girlfriend at the time who I adored, and I was told. So I was with her before the band got together, and I was told to basically pretend that I did not have a girlfriend, and I couldn't understand that thinking at all. I was told you have to give across this perception that you are available. And if they know that you have got a girlfriend, it may affect them buying your records. And I used to think to myself, what a crock of nonsense. Because I genuinely believe, Tony, if you and I were to speak to fans and say to them, you know that I'm in a relationship, you know that Tony's married, would it stop you buying a record? You really think it would? No chance.
But it's funny you say that because we had situations where we would go to parties or a premiere, and it was like, look, the band had got to be seen walking in together, and the wives, girlfriends, or whatever, or certainly the girlfriends at the time, have to be seen to do something else. It's absolute nonsense. And do you know what? I think it's all about control. Yeah. And the problem is with this business, it's right. People say to me, do you love music? Yes, I love music. Do I love playing? Do I love recording? Do I love writing? Do I love singing? Absolutely, it's the best. But the business itself sucks. Yeah, it's a dreadful business. Yeah. I don't know anybody in our business that's not been ripped off, or controlled, or whatever. And it's a lot of it's all about control. And it's. I mean, you see, you must know this that. Someone will say to you, "Oh, have you met so and so?" And you say, "Yeah, they're really lovely." Oh, they weren't very nice to me, or I wasn't allowed to get anywhere near them. And it's not so much the artists themselves, because most artists, hey, we're pretty cool guys and stuff, but it's the people that surround you that protect their own interests, and therefore won't let anybody get near. Especially certainly some American artists, they have a whole entourage of people that to stop other people getting near them, which is just rubbish.
You see, I can only appreciate it more as I sort of matured and grew older. And, we went our separate ways, my ex-girlfriend and I. And I never fully appreciated the effect that it actually must have had on her, because she was basically told, you're not to exist. And that, when you tell a young girl that, she was only 19, 20 years old, that's just not cool. It's not cool, right?
It's horrible. I mean, it really is. It's just not very nice. And and as I said, it's all about control and controlling the girlfriends, controlling the family, controlling you. It's unnecessary. I mean, the one thing that I'd apart from a few instances, I got to the point actually where I was like, this is bollocks. I'm not having it anymore. Yeah. But I remember that in the very early days, you can't be seen to be walking the street. You've got to get a cab everywhere. You can't be seen to be. I said, shut the back door. I'm doing what I want to do. I'll go up the pub with my mates. I mean, I love a pub. Go up the pub with my mates, have a drink. My mates are still my mates to this day. Just because I got into the music business, I didn't get into this kind of, the glitterati are my best pals. It's a load of old nonsense. I've got some people that are, but essentially my mates are still the same people that I went to school with or whatever and met when I was a young kid.
I'm exactly the same. And I always felt I had to keep that sense of normality about me while all the nonsense was going on in and around me. I did my very best to try and stay normal. And I think that was when I first met you, that was the one thing that really struck me was just how normal you were.
Yeah.
And I remember the sitting down and you giving me such great advice, and I've always been very, very grateful for that. So what I want to move on to now, Tony, is when did you first start to feel tension within the band?
Where do you want to start?
How long have we
uh,
got?
there are always tensions in every band. I mean,
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
listen, it's well documented. Myself and Gary have a quite strong characters and personalities, and we have very different viewpoints on a lot of things, be it politics, religion, whatever. And to put this in context, we had some wonderful times, amazing time, and some great, really good friendly moments. But there were also some times when we ching,
Yeah.
and there were times when me and the rest of the band, I would literally be arguing in a room with the rest of the band. So there were a lot of tensions, but there were some amazingly beautiful bits as well where we laughed and we drank together and we made great music and stuff like that. But maybe it's a necessary thing of being a great band that you have a couple of protagonists in there that are going to every now and again want to kill each other. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but certainly, during that true parade period was amazing because we started to get to the point where the band was successful. We were earning a little bit of money. I mean, that's another myth that all of a sudden you're on top of the pops and you're multi-millionaires. It does not work like that, as you know. And,
Oh, yes.
and so there were moments of brilliantness. I mean, I remember Nassau, the Bahamas, recording there, Music Land Studios, the Parade. We had some brilliant times and some brilliant tours and fun. Steve Norman was always the comic, would always keep our chipper up. So it was brilliant. But then there were tensions. There were definite tensions because, occasionally me and Gary would disagree quite a lot. It slowly got worse and worse. There were, I think, within bands, there's sort of, I don't know, it sounds a bit arty-farty, but like living organisms, and organisms start to change, and outside influences, i.e. girlfriends, wives, and everything else, start to change the dynamic within the band. And I remember the last album that we made, apart from a couple of times we got back together again, was an album called Heart Like a Sky. And the camaraderie in the band was shot to pieces, I thought. And because of relationships, most of the band wanted to record it in London. And I remember myself and John Keyboard thinking, we got to get some camaraderie back in this band. So we said, look, why don't we go away like we normally do to Germany, to wherever it is, just the band, few beers, get the vibe back together again. And the others didn't want to do it. They wanted to record in London. And I thought to myself, if we record in London, this is going to take forever and it's just not going to end well. And it didn't, because at that point I said, during the making of that album, I said, this is the last album I'm making. I'm not doing another one. It wasn't the best experience in the world. And it cost a bloody fortune. I can't even listen to the album. But there you go. That's the way it goes sometimes.
You see, what I've always sort of slightly troubled me for quite a while. I'm totally at peace with it now, but I always felt, and you'll understand this, with the dynamic of a band, if you've got somebody who's penning all your hits and basically writing all your hits, and then you've got a front man who's just booming everything out, and you've got all these screaming girls and all that sort of stuff going on and around you. I always felt, and I don't know why this happened, I think it just evolved, but there sort of became like a popularity contest to see who was the most popular person in the band. And I don't really know where it came from, Tony. It just evolved out of nothing. And it used to really get on my wick.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't care who's the most popular member of the band as long as we start making a living and we become successful. I couldn't give a monkeys if you get more fan mail than I do. I just want the band to do well. Did you ever sense that in Spandau?
Oh yeah, God, that was that was that, because there was definitely that going on. That was happening a lot, especially in photo shoots and things like that. And people trying to vie for the, the brothers and all that sort of stuff. And it just kind of got to the point, it's like going,
yeah, it became tiring.
It became nauseating, actually. But that's the dynamic of a band, I suppose. But the problem is when the dynamics become so diverse and so fractured, one or t'other says, that's it.
Yeah.
And as I said, I remember on that last album, Heart Like a Sky, bloody awful title. I just said, I can't do this anymore. Music's fun. Music is about being, happy and everything else. And we did a tour after the album, but you could see and feel the tension within the band on stage. And I think the fans can see that. I mean, the great thing is about what I do now is I have an amazing band. I call them the Fabulous TH Band. They're my mates. I've got some of the same crew that have been with me for 30 years. It's a real family kind of thing. And we just have a laugh.
Yeah.
We're not analyzing. Sometimes within bands, you analyze things. You're analyzing, oh, does that look right? Is that the right outfit? Oh, God, is that the right thing to do? Oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Oh, mate, just chill out. We just have a lot of fun. We play great music. And people who see the band say, wow. One of the biggest compliments that we had when we were touring America, a bunch of American musicians said, hey, man, you play like American musicians. Because, you go to the States and they are the creme de la creme in most cases. And I thought, wow, that's such a compliment for the band because they are such fine musicians. And I'm happy now. You've got to be happy when you're making music.
Definitely. We're almost done. Got a couple more questions for you. Tony, what I've always remembered about you in particular is when we split up in the spring of 95. So by that time, you and I had sort of known each other quite well for about 18 months or so. And I remember coming to your house I think we picked each other up to go and play football or something like that. And I remember you sitting me down and giving me what was invaluable advice about how to deal with the split. And I've always been very grateful for it, and I've never, ever forgotten your kindness.
Oh, thanks.
Tony, I've always wondered, when you guys went your separate ways, did anybody help you?
Apart from my family, no, not really. I didn't. No, I don't think I ever got. I don't remember getting any advice as such.
Were you able to lean on anybody? See, I was able to lean on you. Were you able to lean on anybody?
No, like I say, apart from family and friends. But I just went, oh, whatever. I'm very black and white. I'm the easiest going fella in the world.
Yeah,
easy. Yeah. But when it gets to the point where I've had enough, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty laid back. I don't analyze things too much. I'm not a very analytical person, which drives my wife Ali up the wall because I don't think before a leap. And the trouble is, I've always been like it as a kid. I'll just jump off something, not know what the consequences are.
Yeah, you're preaching to the converted.
Yeah, so well, you're the same, I think that's part of the DNA of our personalities. We got, some people are very measured in everything they do. I'm totally not measured. And that's why I'm never afraid in the studio, for instance, to, when someone says, oh, can we try something different? Yeah, okay, whatever. If we like it, we like it. We don't, we don't. And that's it.
Are you at peace with everything?
Yeah, I'd say I was, yeah. It's really good. You mentioned Lanny, my first wife. We get on fine. And she's great. The big kids are absolutely great. Tom's now 39.
I know, mate.
What?
I can't believe it.
So which is great. So Tom's 39. My Tony is 37 now.
Yeah.
Max 32. You know all my kids. And then my little Zara, she's now 16. Before I know it, she'll be off to uni. And little Genevieve, she's 11. And my wife Ali, we're very lucky. I count myself as being incredibly lucky. We've got a lovely house in the country. We live in Buckinghamshire. We've got great friends, family, and and a pub across the field.
The most important thing.
That's the most important thing. So I do have to check myself every now and again, because I think, number one, I don't feel like I'm 62. I'm going to be 63 in June, which is nonsense. I try and keep myself fit as possible, and try and be good wherever I can. Not too many trips to the pub, but you've got to live life, and I'm blessed with beautiful children, my beautiful wife, and life is good. And I'm making a new album and working with people I want to work with, and I think the songs are fantastic. I'm slightly biased because I sort of wrote them or co-wrote them, but it's good stuff. And I think you get to a certain point as a person where you feel comfortable. You know what it's like when you're younger, you're always, as I said before, analysing things. Oh, is that the right thing? Oh, is that sound all right? Is that middle? Oh, and you get to a point where instinctively what's good and what's not. And I think that's so invaluable. It really is.
All I do now is I just seek the approval of my wife. If my wife is happy with me, then everything else, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter a jot. As long as my wife is happy with me, then I'm happy.
Well, that's kind of, I think every fella says that. She often says to me, well, you fix a date. If I fix the date, it will be the wrong date. You know it. She's out there in the hallway.
She's waiting for you, isn't she?
Bye, darling. Love you.
Mate, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on. I've loved it. It's just brilliant. Mate,
it's been good to chat, Ali. It's been nice to chat to you. And I'm so glad, you're doing it. You're living on the Austrian-German border, and beautiful where you live.
I know.
You'll have to when you're coming over, you'll have to let me know.
Oh, mate, don't worry. I'll be banging on your door with my suitcase, looking for the weekend to stay.
Oh, mate, no, anytime. Really good to see you, man.
You
really
too,
good.
Mate. Thank you so much. Lots of love.
Yeah, and you. Love to your family, and take care. Cheers,
Will do,
Ali.
mate. Bye bye.
See you, mate. Bye.
My thanks to Tony Hadley. If you enjoyed today's watch, I would be absolutely thrilled if you would please consider subscribing to The Accidental Pop Star here on YouTube, because all it does is help me build the channel and the momentum going forward. Guys, we are all done. I really hope you enjoyed today's chat with Tony, and I will see you again very soon for a brand new episode of The Accidental Pop Star. Bye for now.